Greetings! Welcome once more to the Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive back into the world of Golarion, the setting for the Pathfinder role-playing game system? Because we're going to be diving under the waves here, heading to Xidao, a nation in the TNZ under the ocean. Fascinating place, and I hope you're going to enjoy learning all about it. I'm your host and guide, Dracovin, and I will lead you through a gateway through the time portal space, taking us all the way to Golarion. Please stay close to me. My magic will make sure you can survive underwater with me. Otherwise, breathing underwater, crushed by pressure, might get to you, so stay close. Just to be on the safe side, a little bit of tip would be helpful, like subscribing, and let me know about everything about this if you think in the comments below. Xidao waits. Let's head for the portal. Grab my hand. Let's get going. Right, Xidao. Now there's a couple of sources that I can talk about, books to mention. Dragon Empire's Gazetteer and TNZ World Guide. I'm going to dive deeper into this. We'll get a little bit extra information. Alright, let's go over some basics of Xidao. It is, of course, a collection of 50 or so city-states that actually exist under the ocean of the Xidao Bay. Again, it's the region named after it that they're part of. Makes kind of sense here. Yeah? Xidao Gulf, I'm sorry. And the fact is that they have a unified government for various reasons, which we'll explain today, that makes it that they work together. There's a collective enemy that they're facing against. And if that enemy didn't exist, well, some of them might still be in a nation, the others not. It's kind of an interesting place. The capital is known to be Shabru, and it has a Grand Council, which makes up of leaders or representatives of every one of those city-states. The current ruler, the current elected official at top of that Grand Council, is the High Matriarch Urakadusi. So, we have Ardos, Amatharus, Sicilians, Dragons, Phaedon, Ghosts, Grindylows, Krakens, Luddings, Merfolk, and Spirits that are all the people that live in this place. And Thalassic and Tien are both major languages. Plenty of religions, depending on your region that you're in. And things like seafood, ships, gems, jewelry, alcohol are things that they all support. Yes, under pressure. Done. So you can see this is the kind of view of the nation that we get. Let's talk about its origins and history. And this is one of the things related to it. Well, sea dragons. Let's discuss. So, the waters of Xidao Gulf are where we look to for the technical nation, but it's really more an alliance of city-states, that is Xidao. And these distinct city-states are on this common banner and make a confederation. And it is a very unique classified area. Colorful coral domes, ancient draconic palaces. Every one of these city-states, every one of these states is diverse, as its population is, as its city is. And the thing is, there are threats in the Gulf. And these threats have kept Xidao united for millennia, locked in a never-ending war. So, early days of Xidao, when we still have all these people of the sea, they venerated sea dragons as the protectors and guardians, and this is the Age of Dragons. And as it grew to the end, there were still a number of elaborate temples, opulent palaces built in their honor, and many stand today. But it's when, during this Age of Dragons and towards its back end, that the developing nations began to battle with each other, war with each other. Conflict. The Sea Dragons stepped in as mediators, encouraged the nations to live in peace and harmony. And barring that, at least uneasy truce. So it's another, again, thing of like, if the threat to Xidao ended, would the nation fall apart? Maybe, but peace would probably remain, generally speaking. The Sea Dragons aren't really around as much anymore, so it's mixed bag. Earthfall, though. Earthfall made Xidao a nation. It created it. Because the Ayumaru Trench, the supernatural trench where undead flow out of constantly, widened. We'll talk about the trench and how it is intrinsic to the creation here, but yes, it was a minor valley, with superstitions around it, it was used for various reasons, and it became a gaping wound that cleaved the Gulf in two. And the evils that were in it began to awaken, and plagues of undead came out to fight the Xidao denizens. This common enemy made them first organize an Ulus alliance of military to strike back, push the army of undead back in the depths of the Ayumar. They never managed to pierce deep into it. They've driven it back. They've gone into it a little bit, but going deep in there isn't possible. Not at this point. And year after year, though, they continue to wage war on the creatures that come out of it. The undead army has grown stronger and stronger, their ranks bolstered by the dead of the Gulf. So, it was ultimately the Confederation of Xidao was founded for this region, the city-state banding together to hopefully find a solution together to end the threat of the Ayumar, and to maintain and make sure it does not threaten everybody. There have been theories about what's going on there, sea liches, enormous krakens, but really the truth of the origin of these undead is unknown, and the dark powers that are there. And scouts that go down there, they don't come back alive. They come back, but never. So today, Xidao flourishes, not only because of the strength of the nation, but of course the sea trade that they have across the Gulf. They have allies in many of the numbered nations outside of the Gulf, and of course enemies with things like Lansha, which they speculate the Kraken ruler coming up there might be linked to Ayamaru, but no one knows for sure. There's the Gulf, and where a bunch of the cities are. There is change that happens in the Gulf as much as the winds are. Dramatic transformations that occur throughout the year. During the warmer months, there are kelp forests that sprout up in the nutrient depths, with their fronds growing at astonishing speed and reaching the calm, shiny sallows. These forests that seem to pop up every year. And there's also many coral reefs, rich with habitats of the vibrant ecosystems. On the balmy, windless days, the water of the Gulf can be clear, for passing sailors to spot the reefs, the forests, and of course, the cities below the water. The grand coral monuments that mark the largest cities. And of course, then you have the trench, deep in the middle, running north-south, splitting territory into eastern and western halves, which we'll talk about the difference between them. On the eastern side, you have, of course, Yashabura, the capital, and Urakuris, a historic state, the state in an ancient dragon palace. On the west side, you have Shabla, the western capital, and of course, other various locations too. In the shallow regions of the trench, sinkholes leading a labyrinthine network of caverns that you'll see outlaws and criminals going into. If they can survive the undead, they can find zones where there might be areas to survive from the forces of the authorities. And of course then, skeletal whales, ghostly sharks, undead sea creatures of all kinds protect the trench, preying on things that may come near. There's also a tempest, an inhospitable zone of storms that migrates, seemingly randomly, and at the heart of it is the Azure Serpent, we're going to talk about. We saw a picture of just previously when we talked about the history. An ancient sea dragon that, when her son died, basically it's driven her into a sadness that she draws the storm around her and just travels everywhere. And it's made it difficult, with other sea dragons also having a resurgence, banding together to basically seek tribute, worship, or to sink ships. So typhoons, sea dragons, things are a little bit more tumultuous on the open ocean of the Gulf. Dragon towns across the regions. But despite these, the Gulf has traders and adventurers alike. There's the elusive Wai-God, which we'll talk about a little bit more before the end of the day, which are floating islands that suddenly appear out of the depths. Where they come from, why they come from, no one really knows, but they vanish as quickly as they appear, collapsing within minutes and drawing everything that was part of them, including people on them, to the bottom of the ocean. And these have sediment, treasures, and things from the seafloor. So these like weird expulsions of the seafloor come floating up to the surface briefly, which might have ancient treasures or all kinds of strange things on it to be discovered. But also, the bones of the dead that don't want to be disturbed. So careful about that one there. Warning there to a little bit of degree. let's talk about the cities. And there are 4 main cities that we can talk about and are important. 2 in the east, 2 in the west. Let's talk about the 2 capitals. Yashabaru and the western capital, Hubashabla. Yashabaru, largest of the city-states, the effective capital of Xidao. The gleaming capital with kaleidoscopic dome-shaped buildings, famed coral and glass towers that breach the surface of the Gulf, and is the face of Xidao, the center of diplomacy, the center of government. Every year, the convocation of Grand Council, held in the city, brings together the leaders to address issues that deal with the entire Gulf and to vote on future policies. They also have diplomacy with surface nations. It's one of the few city-states that do have these above-water structures, with confederation halls and guest housing for visiting dignitaries. There's politics, decorum, and an atmosphere that can seem to see this place as almost elitist sometimes, with temples dedicated to Abadar, Daikatsu, being very common here, and a high volume of merchants and craftsmen. It is a diverse city, and Athamarus only make about half of the population. Think about that as the city was probably originally an Athamaru city to begin with, and now only about half the population is the native species to the place. That's how diverse the species are in Yashabaru. Hubashabla, the western part. So this is military. This is where the main military presence. It has a proximity to Ayumaru, and it makes it a very important strategic location, because it is a place where Wanshu can kind of be looked after. Most of the troops are housed and trained here. Most of the military is Xidao. An outsider would see this place as more of a military city. In reality, it's not. It has a cultural location of its own right. The events and traditions are regimented, good-natured, and good-humored to the locals. Martial arts competitions, sports tournaments are incredibly popular here. And it draws large crowds and large bets. There's an annual courtship festival, the Serpent's Ball, which attracts beings from across Xidao hoping to find a perfect match at the Serpent's Ball. There are shrines dedicated to Hei Fang, very commonplace, along with those of General Susumu and Nilan Vati. It may seem very orderly. Basically got military presence, but there is tension. The local populations have seen a lot more soldiers brewing in the years. They do accuse the military of encroaching on the city, getting rid of local landmarks and monuments for more military-related facilities. And the shadows of the city, under the army's nose, separatist faction wants to take the city back from the warmongering occupiers. Now we head back to the east, to an interesting city-state. Urukunz. It's in the remains of a vast draconic palace in the east. It was once the ancient capital of Xidao, and now, where the then independent city-state would bring the concerns for the Sea Dragon Court for guidance and meditation. It remains heir of ancient traditions, home of the largest research archives and magical academies, one of which is in the Big Palace. So, if you want to, those studies who seek peers above waves or into the lightless depths. People here worship Selen and Quizon, though it's also known for dragon cults, lineage that segment of dragon blood in their veins and venerate sea dragons as their ancestors. These influential families that have these pushes towards a state religion of sea dragon worship, basically aided by the High Matriarch herself, who is part of that kind of group. It's been a controversy kind of thing because there has been an insurgency of sea dragons that have demanded them to basically be reinstated as gods, that have been threatening the trade-dependent economy, summoning storms. And so, yeah, the dragon cults basically supporting them kind of put a legitimacy to their bad actorship. So, yeah, it is an interesting position that things have been put in right now. Basically, they've been trying to accept the dragon's demands, and have been constructing a number of new dragon temples in the city. The final main city, which is in the northwest of Xidao, is Meru. It's a city of pirates. It's a city-state infamous for harboring rogues, fences, and fugitives of all sorts. Taverns, gambling houses. It's a place for adventurers, mercenaries, you're trying to find quick employment. But you have to be careful that you don't run afoul of the law. It's tolerated because it has a firm chokehold on the richest pearl-gathering waters. There are black pearls that are exported from this city that are prized by jewelers and artisans across TNZ, and they're difficult to get because they're over near the giant rift in the water that leads into an undead monstrosities. You know, kind of hard place to gather them. So it's a very profitable industry of scavenging. Is also pretty important here. They sort through shipwrecks, even old, picking up remains and getting goods from them. They've partnered with sea dragons occasionally to sink trade fleets with magical storms and then loot the wreckage. Hey, we created new things to loot. Officially, this is condemned by the elected officials of Meru. No. Don't convince the sea dragons by bribing them to destroy those ships and then raid them afterwards. Though they don't do anything to stop it. Yeah, in exchange for this, those leaders kind of get a little bit of money in their own pockets. Talk about some locations. And the big one we have to talk about is Ayumon. Places that are other than cities. So, this trench used to be a sacred burial ground for Xidao. There was a wound in its earth, and it led all the way to the heart of the Underworld. Bodies would be taken to the edge, lined burial cloth with various goods and offerings, the Lord of the Dead, and using heavy stones to weigh them down, thrown into the darkness. Eternal rest. Traveling there, forbidden. You'd bother the spirits of the dead, they'd follow you back to the surface. Of course, over the years, when that was forbidden to go there, evil, horrible things went down in there. And then Earthfall happened. That's going to be like a theme for a lot of like terrible things going on in Golarion. And then Earthfall happened. It was a curse, a plague on the city-states that lasts to this day. The restless dead spilled out of Ayumon. Stone moles, raiding settlements, slaughtering the living indiscriminately. Sinkholes, rising up in the sides of the trench, leading to underground, maze-like networks, some even going down to hot caves where there are geothermal vents, or blistering lava. And criminal organizations have been taking advantage of this. Hey, there are forges they could do to craft valuable weapons. Hot spots like that are difficult to find in underwater, and forging metal weapons and items are difficult. So yeah, you as a criminal can start forging stuff and sell it to your criminal buddies. Most of the caves are unexplored, as is Ayumar itself, because it's so dangerous, deadly, and whatever monstrous beasts or the dead that are down there, yeah. Other locations to talk about are two more we're going to talk about: trade spires and dragon towers. The trade spires are dotted with huge coral towers that track local trade. These are ports and lighthouses that are both underwater and above. It's where traders and Xidao can mingle. It's where traders from Xidao can mingle with foreign traders, basically. Sailors or other possible battles. So if you are a merchant looking to sell some stuff to Xidao, you go to one of these trade spires. It's above ground, above water, and some less savvy Xidao craftsmen basically hire the service of an amphibious broker to peddle their wares. And these traders seek goods that are difficult to acquire underwater. Steel weapons, tools and armor, ceramics, glassware, and then produce like fruits and vegetables, particular tubers, and other root vegetables. Those are exotic delicacies in Xidao. So if you can bring a bunch of potatoes to Xidao, you're gonna be famous in a lot of ways. They're a delicacy. Then you get the dragon towers. If you want to navigate, especially during the season of storms, leave offerings at the dragon towers through the walls. A far cry from the trade spires, these are imposing monuments of smooth carved marble, shining pillars that extend out the surface of the water and reach downwards, reach towards the clouds. These are the territory of sea dragons, and signal to travelers that the local sea dragon may be amenable to exchange of goods and services. So these towers are a marker from a sea dragon that lives in a local area. It's like, hey, trade with me, and I will ensure your safe passage. And again, these are capricious and legal creatures, so it's a bit of luck and negotiation that may be needed to make sure you get safe passage. Just don't mess with them. Then you'll be in trouble. Let's talk about who's in charge. And of course, we've got the High Matriarch here. So, the Grand Council. That's the representative of each individual city-state, usually the leader of the city-state, doesn't necessarily need to be. and has a yearly meeting in Yashabaru. It's a lofty celebration during the season of tranquility, the convocation of the Grand Council, or the convocation for storm. They talk about what they're going to do with the Xidao during this time period for the next year. They try not to interfere with business of individual city-states unless it's absolutely necessary. And lower level and local decisions are left to those city-states. So each individual city-state tends to govern themselves, and only when it deals with all of Xidao, or something that they're doing deals with other places of Xidao, do they get involved. So there could be absolute monarchies, constitutional republics. Each individual city-state has their own individual government. And then we have the High Matriarch, which presides over the council and serves as the diplomatic face of Xidao, elected from the council members, and serves until a majority vote of no confidence is passed to replace them. Though the title is High Matriarch, and it has been traditionally the High Matriarch title has traditionally been used regardless of gender. That's an important thing. It is an elected official. And though historically Xidao's leaders have been female, that is important to note, basically because Athamaru settlements were traditionally governed by a matriarch, an elder of the settlement, and the settlement's reigning clan. And these settlements, as they've grown, exceeded single clan, non-Athamaru people have increasingly become common. This has shifted them. Though regardless, women are very high society. Athamaru, in their society, big matriarch thing. So again, that's why, yes, the High Matriarch isn't always female, just tends to be because of, again, ancient traditions from the big population of Athamarus, who I think tend to be one of the more populous populations in the Gulf, not again, and be the heart of Xidao's culture. Now we get our current Grand Council High Matriarch of Urakadusi, shown here. This oracle is part, her family's rumored to be part of those dragon cults, so keep that in mind. Now, the other notable face of Xidao is its army. Its collective army that hail from all corners of the Gulf. Stationed near Pobashala, the soldiers are trained rear-round and defense against the Ayumaru, or any other threats that may exist. There are some city-states that have mandatory periods of military service for its citizens, which is controversial and highly contested policy. But the army is jointly led by two high commanders. The two current ones are High Commander Thave, a merfolk, and High Commander Sawtooth, a ocean giant. They hail from West and East Xidao, respectively. Neither are Athamaru, which is a sore spot about with traditionalists, but they have striven to prove both of their skill and loyalty to Xidao on the battlefield. So they're two heavy commanders who are loyal to Xidao from East and West. Sea dragons. We gotta talk about them. They were imperial arbiters between the nations, revered for their power and wisdom. Some took humanoid form or human form and guided the development of early Xidao society. Others were respected and worshipped as nobles, rulers of the sea. And Curtis is built in our ancient palaces with the grand structures. It's a magical academy. But these nations united to combat Ayumaru, the sea dragons, retreated. They let the Confederacy develop on its own terms, because they were having a conflict with underworld dragons to the south. So there's still a lot found throughout Xidao, and they tend to keep to themselves, having their own agendas. But one lineage of the sea dragons, descended from the ancient royal line of sea dragons, which once ruled over Xidao, and basically sees themselves as the aiders and created the society, still reside near Kurnis, and occasionally participate in diplomatic and government decisions. You also have the less scrupulous sea dragons that have taken up near Meru. They're prideful. They skew traditional arrangements, basically taking, instead of the tower offerings for safe passage, they strike deals with the pirates and scavengers to sink ships and get some of the spoils. Thanks for the money. In most of Xidao, with the exceptions of Meru and Urkinus, sea dragon worship has risen. We got Heifang being a plague bunny in city temples across the Gulf, and there has been some tension between Xidao and the sea dragons, their past protectors. And then we have to take a Luang Feng, image I showed a lot earlier, the Azure Serpent, at the heart of the Tempest. Her only child was killed by Tian Sin. The death has been muddied with rumors and mistlings, but most agree that the death was unintentional, a tragic and foolish accident. But the tempest was raged across the Gulf, a small but deadly area of swirling winds, unending storms that moves incessantly across the waters as she roams the sea, unable to move past her grief. And if you're unfortunately caught up in it, you're probably going to be ripped apart, as her sorrow is strong enough to whip up winds and lash the seas. She is indeed sad. Let's look at daily life in Xidao. And the thing is, we can look at some similarities in all daily life, but because there's so many different city-states, everyone has their own daily routines. And depending on where you are, what region you are in, also influences how your daily life is. Eastern and Western cities are very different. In Eastern cities, the water's a lot more shallow. It's a lot more clear. The light of the sun easily makes it through to the sea floor and into the coral monuments and stone structures beneath the waves. So, and these are trade-dependent city-state, so they have a diurnal schedule, where comparable to most surface dwellers. They wake up in the rising sun, craftspeople basically get to their booths, and by the time the sun has risen, outdoor markets bustle with activities, merchants hawk their handmade wares. This place is known for its intricate beadwork, jewelry, its remarkable mother-of-pearl inlays, and stalls full of beautiful artisan goods. The busiest city centers, busiest centers of the underwater marketplace are, of course, the public auction house, where bids are frantically over items imported from the surface. Ceramics, steel tools, root vegetables. Couriers have been seen rushing to and from local trade spires, hurrying to meet tight deliveries and deadlines, intercepting merchant ships, riding docile aquatic mounts like huge manta rays and giant eels to travel these places. That's the east. On the west side, you're deeper underwater. You're closer to Ayumaru. The darkened waters means that light doesn't really penetrate very well the water's surface, except for a few hours during midday, when the sun is at its peak. These cities are less dependent on the cycle of the sun, and can be seen as nocturnal, but really the lack of the daytime boon and activity isn't mean that they go about that. It's rather that the citizens go about their day as they please. Your day will depend on what you're doing in your life. Maybe you're doing stuff during the day. Maybe you're doing stuff during the night. It depends on what you need, because it's basically the same all day. But it's basically more or less the same equal amount of nocturnal and diurnal business. Basically, yes. It doesn't matter the time of day, and rather than being just a day thing, it's like an even split between day and night. This spectrum also serves the barracks, because, hey, the guards are always on guard to protect against the Ayumaru, around the clock. And it's unavoidable in these cities. Armored soldiers walk the streets, whether on or off duty. Craftsmen toil to work, making items that basically are more practical compared to artistic, the ornamental goods of Eastern Xidao. Barracks are always needing more weapons and armor. Most locals have a meal twice a day. Trade with the surface nations provides Xidao with a lot of delicacies. Wealthier families eschew meat for exotic fruits and vegetables grown on land, while well-off citizens mostly subside mostly on kelp fruits and seaweed. Seasonings are in demand, though underwater you can't really use powders and sauces, so instead food is imbued with their flavor by adding small amounts of the spices and herbs directly into the dishes. Eastern citizens actually frown on consumption of fish. Western Xidao has no qualms about it. Shellfish is a huge staple. The freshness of their catches. Scallops, oysters, and giant clams are often eaten raw and served with zesty sea mustard. Slices. When the sun sets and the waters grow cold, most Xidao retreats to the comfort of their homes, retreating to spherical bubble beds lined with plush sea sponges. In the east, they have relatively little nightlife, though in the west, pubs and casinos can be found in almost every western city. They serve special fermented beverages from sealed waterproof pouches and place bets on the next day's seal races, a popular pastime, and one that has bankrupt men. So you got your pouches of an alcoholic beverage, fermented beverage, and some seal races to bet on. Talk about the seasons. They're salty. So there are 3 seasons in Xidao, each of which has a change in the ecology of the Gulf. In late summer and early autumn is the season of storms, with squalls and heavy rains. The kelp forests get swept away, a lot of their fronds being destroyed. It's more deadly for travelers. There is a harvest every year around here, with less savory scavengers from Meru of sunken trade ships, because they're trying to get across the Gulf. And of course, you can try to get the protection of dragon towers, offering stuff. The surface is balmy and warm. The shallow waters are coldest during the season. And the trade-dependent cities of the east kind of go a little bit of a low activity, almost hibernation. And as the season draws to the end, well, that's when the depths of Ayumaru kind of come out the most. And Western Xidao is on its highest alert. Militaristic cities are taut to tension and ready for a fight. A lot of religious festivals happen during this time. The storm god Heifang gets a lot of stuff. After that's the longest season, the season of change. This is the months between late autumn and early spring. It's transitioning between the cold season of the storms and the warm season of tranquility. The decimation of the kelp forest leads to sunlight needing its way to the depths and new waves of kelp being grown. Kelp farmers harvest tender kelp sprouts, which are a local delicacy. It's prime fishing season, when fish go near the surface, on the algae blooms. Winds whip across it, dredging up waters from deep and bringing back them to the shallows. Water temperature changes quickly and unpredictably. Lots of strong currents. Buried treasure and forgotten bones kind of pop up in the Waiga, those floating islands. This is associated with new life, adventures, meeting, love. And this is when the Serpent's Ball happens, that big courtship festival we're talking about. Then we get the final season of the year. In late spring, the season of tranquility. The mercurial waters are calm of the Gulf. The kelp forests are mature, their fronds reaching to the sky. It is relaxed. The city-states are at the business. The calm waters are a great time for merchants of abroad to trade with the trade spires. And this is when Ayumaru rarely attack during the season. So that's another reason the season of tranquility is so great, because this is the season that Ayumaru kind of heads back to. So the barracks in the west take advantage of this to basically get some resources together, recruit new soldiers, train them. This is the kind of preparing for the next season. There's a lot of large-scale events. The Festival of Arts, which is a 3-week fair hosted by the temples of Shaolin, where during this week, exhibitions and competitions of all kinds draw huge crowds to the historic city of Erkens. The festivals celebrate fine craftsmanship, skilled performers, and beauty of all forms. This is where also we have a lot of diplomatic meetings during this part of the year, and of course, the convocation. When we talk about, when we talk about the culture of Xidao, we have to talk about the divide between East and West, because it is such a major thing with it. They have a giant trench cutting through their territory. It means that the East and West have developed their own unique traditions over time. And the thing is, it's time-consuming, but not difficult to travel across them. But it still made this cultural divide pretty heavy, and migration between East and West rare. The East is an economic powerhouse. Merchants, artists, politicians. The economy and trade centers of the two major cities there are pretty big important. And their structures above water facilitate this. The diplomacy, the Grand Council, this is all parts of the East and makes it have a high volume of travelers and traders throughout their cities. They're more open to outsiders. They're relatively diverse. Athamaras, Murpha, Silians, Lutings, and occasional Grindilo are all regular. There's temples to Selin, Daikatsu, Abaddon, which are common in Eastern Gulf, with Paizo having a healthy degree of veneration. Of course, you've got the magical academies, with the houses of Xidao over at Erkens, and the dragon cults. They're peaceful. They've coexisted with each other for centuries, and they have a sense of unity and common identity. And it makes travels between these city-states incredibly smooth. So if Aymar were to go away, and threaten to be gone, the East would probably remain united. West, on the other hand, these city-states basically would be at each other's throats in an instant. Ayumaru went away. Most of them have Athamara majorities, with Ardos, Sicilians, and Luddings not being uncommon, particularly in the major city-states, like Okoshibalu and Meru. Haifang, venerated in almost every episode, along with Navalanvati, General Susumu, and special folk heroes. There are also fringe cults that are said to worship the dark powers of Ayumaru, but this is denied by people in Western Xidao. But, you know, they probably exist. The settlements here are distrustful of surface dwellers and outsiders. They are still reliant on trade from the east, as most lack the capability to forge steel weapons and armor in large quantities. Above-water forges in trade spires do exist, as do crucibles connected to underwater geothermal vents. They are rare. The underwater smiths create copper-plated weapons and tools and armors using electric eels to fuse thin coatings of metal onto carved stone bases. So they're basically using the science. Visitors to smithies will see flashes and loud zaps. These cities, they're almost seen as having underwater lightning storms, but not true. Mounted trainers are of prestige in the West. They breed and trade giant moray eels, sharks, aquatic beasts for military use. So this rocky relation between East and West is a thing there too. The denizens of the East are seen as being too soft for enjoying comfort, while the West is put themselves on the line for their safety. That's what the West says. The East condemns the West for cooperating with bandit state of Meru, enabling crime and harboring fugitives. So, yes. Let's look a bit more of their culture before we finish up. Art, fashion, and it is a very big part of their way. Color is important. As they are people of the coral reefs, vivid colors, eye-catching patterns are important, and their woven fabrics use this very heavily. They weave together hardy aquatic plant fibers to create these. They're loose-fitting, light, shimmering, billowing sleeves. They mimic fins and scales. Tattoos and piercings are extremely popular in all residents. Tattoo artists and jewelers dedicating their lives to mastering their craft. Ostentatious jewelry is common among the well-off, from hammered gold bangles to mother-of-pearl necklaces. Intricate carvings of bone and silver are popular amongst the soldiers, who are using them as protective charms against the evil magic of Ayumaru. The truly wealthy wear strings of black pearls. Hey, remember I said black pearls? Harvested in the north, another reason that Meru is kept kind of on the back burner there. Yeah, you have to get those near Ayumaru. I mentioned that. There's also sports, spots for arts, culture, craft, performances. Touring performing troops enjoy popularity in many of the settlements, putting on shows and concerts in the late afternoon, after the markets have closed for the day. Synchronized dance teams are especially well known. They don silken costumes with long flowing sleeves and colorful ribbons, both of which leave beautiful trails of color behind them as they spin and dance through the water. It's physical prowess that draws sizable crowds. Poshabala is in particular hosts annual martial arts competition that attracts skilled warriors from all corners of the nation. Now, to finish today, let's talk about language, because it's important to talk about language here. It has a unified writing system that represents most languages spoken in the area. It's a different system than the Tian writing of the surface, and it uses a phonetic system, with its own inconsistencies of underwater life. In the depths of Tian's deepest waters, it can be difficult or unnecessary for denizens to kind of figure out up, down, left, right. The script is designed to be able to read from any direction, lacking a true upside down or right side up. Consonants are written in cursive-like manner, with each letter connecting to the next in an unbroken line. Vowels are dotted in a system of dashes and dots, and ancient marks etched into the one side of the consonant. Accents. Outsiders can see the system as confusing. Locals love it. Now, most Tian Xidao natives can speak Tian without issue, but the ability to read Tian is uncommon. Traders, scholars, diplomats, those that deal with surface dwellers will know that. And most Tian documents are transcribed phonetically into the Xidao script for this reason, so it's accessible to the common people. Each sea-state has its own unique dialect, too. Eastern dialects have a melodic sing-song quality, establishing different pitches, and purrs at the end of sentences that can change the sentence's tone, while in West, it's known for their clicks and whistles, used in many of the largest dialects, with origins as soldiers' long-distance communication. But there you go. There's Xidao, a fascinating nation, facing a very huge threat. It's one of those things that there are a number of nations in Golarion that are similar to this, facing a large threat that they must deal with, facing dark things which cause problems for them. But they deal with it. Now Xidao hasn't figured out how to get rid of or to solve the problem of Ayumaru, that's for sure. But certainly speaking, they fight against it. And yes, the East is heavily united. If Ayumara went away, the East would survive. It would retain its own identity. It would be Xidao. West? I don't know. They are more hostile to each other. They're not as understanding as each other. Granted, sometimes they have good reason. They are on the front lines of Ayumaru. They're facing against it a lot more. They see the East as not having the same threat. And they deal with a different kind of situation, different kind of environment. So, would Xidao survive if Ayumaru was ended? I don't know. It would in some form. But the West may break apart and maybe go into individual city-states. Some may retain connection with Xidao, making it a little bit more spotted and less unified. But it's really hard to say where everything will go. Certainly speaking, there is a probably understanding of the unition of Xidao as a nation. They've come together to face a threat, an existential one, and the Sea Dragons understood that. That's why they took a step away, to deal with their own issues. Again, some are still around, but you can see that that's not always a good thing. It's an interesting location, deep beneath the water, that has made a fascinating civilization. One that is unique in many of its own ways, with its own unique ways of doing things, that we can see parallels and also where the differences make sense between water and hope you enjoyed diving in and learning all about it. That'll be it for today. Please check out all my other stuff. It's over on Twitch, over on YouTube. Twitch, I record things like this. I have my live play, Ball of Avonswell, Wednesdays at 8. Go check that out. Or any of my live plays, even the older ones. Discussing tabletop Saturdays at 6. We talk about news of the week, dive deep into it, my kind of podcast, dive deep into topics in the tabletop world, my podcasting thing. I'll also be gaming with friends, variety gaming, hanging out. Check out all that stuff. But if you can't join me live, go over to YouTube, do the YouTube support things, like subscribing and stuff, and hey, what do you think about all this? Now that we kind of really talked about it, where do you see Xidao going? Especially, do you see them finally beating Ayumaru, maybe the adventure path related to that? And if they do, what do you see this in? Check out my social media link below. Again, YouTube side, all the tabletop stuff, so you can just check out all that stuff there. I'll probably eventually do a VOD channel for everything on there, too. Anyway, I'm going to get going. Until the next time we hang out and talk about things, I bid all of you a deep and wonderful farewell.